Welcome to April 8th. Today we're going to discuss how we went from Henry II to King John. Belwark, the Plantagenet Kings of England, April 8th, Wednesday. Number 1. Who is Henry II married to? The answer is Eleanor of Aquitaine. Number 2. What are the two types of juries and what do they do? We have a grand jury. They decide if people have enough evidence to hold a trial against them. And the second one is a trial jury, which actually decides if a person is innocent or guilty. Next, we have Henry II's family tree. So here we see that Henry has 4 male children of Eleanor of Aquitaine. We have Henry the Young King, Richard I, Geoffrey, and John. Henry II's family tree, as we shall see today, is very complicated. All of Henry's children would take an important role in government, and 2 of Henry's sons would actually become kings. That's Richard and John. So here we have Henry II. He was a very complicated king. He came into rule after almost 20 years of civil war from his mother and her cousin, King Stephen. Henry was very controlling of government and law. He set up the same legal system throughout England. He made judges who would ride around on horseback administering the law called a circuit. That's where we get the term circuit judge or circuit court from today. Henry II is declaring throughout his kingdom in this letter that a church will be given to the people who live there. Sorry if you can't read it, it's actually written in Norman French, the language of the English royalty. But he does say the name the people of the English, so he does address this to all the people of England. This may seem small, but it shows Henry II did communicate directly with his subjects of England. Next, we see Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was considered the most beautiful woman of Europe. She was also a political genius. Henry II married Eleanor Aquitaine in 1137. Eleanor married Henry 2 months after her divorce from the French king. She has her marriage reversed by the Pope. It's a long story, I'm not going to get into it. So now back to Henry II. Henry II was a man known for his rage. He once became so angry he fell on the floor and was screaming, all of this while eating straw that made up his bed mattress. Henry II was also very controlling. It was either his way or the highway. Here we have a man named Thomas Becket. He was Henry's best friend. He was born a common man, but he was very smart and made it all the way up to archbishop. Thomas wasn't religious, nor did he ever attend church before then. When a position opened, Thomas was made archbishop by Henry II. Thomas then made it a point not to listen to Henry II anymore. More to follow. But we need to talk about Henry II's son, Henry the Younger. These two actually play a part. So, Henry II had an heir to the throne named Henry as well. I will call him Henry the Younger. Henry the Younger was crowned as king in waiting. So he had a coronation and all of this. Henry did this to make it clear that Henry the Younger was to be his heir. The problem, though, is he did not have Thomas Becket at the ceremony, and Thomas Becket was outraged. It was Thomas Becket's job to decide who would become king, so Henry II bypassed his friend Thomas. So if you notice in this artwork, Thomas Becket has a sword going through his head. Well, after a long dinner party, Henry II said in anger, I wish someone would just kill Thomas Becket. Well, 4 knights took this as law. They broke into Canterbury and killed Thomas Becket in the middle of the church with dozens of witnesses. The church decides to punish Henry II, but I'm going to move forward. So Henry the Young King got the idea one day he should be king. With the help of a French lord, he declared a rebellion. Also, his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, backed her son against her husband, Henry II. In 1173, she returns to England, and Henry had his wife Eleanor in prison for 16 years. She is to be released when Henry II dies. In the year 1183, Henry was getting ready for a battle with his father, Henry II, and his brother Richard. As Henry the Younger was dying, his father wanted to make peace. Henry refused, and Henry passed away. So the heir to the English throne is dead. Now back to Henry II. In 1183, Henry names Richard as an heir, and Henry changed his mind on who would get what land between his other son Geoffrey and John. This caused his sons to rebel. In 1186, Geoffrey, another one of Henry II's sons, died. It was said that God punished Geoffrey for attacking churches and monasteries. Historians believe it was a heart attack, so Henry II lost 2 sons from rebellions. In 1188, Henry II and Richard went to war with each other. A year later, before a battle, his other son John allied himself with Richard against their father. Henry II became ill and died in 1189 upon hearing the news of the betrayal of John and Richard. Henry's wife and 4 sons all betrayed the king upon his death. So that leads us to Richard I. Richard found his father's body lying on the ground. Upon returning to England, Eleanor of Aquitaine is released from her imprisonment. Richard is considered one of the greatest kings of England. Almost no person can disagree with Richard becoming the king when he arrives to England. It was a time of relative peace. Richard would actually embark on a crusade, known as the Third Crusade, which goes to Jerusalem. I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to talk about it all next week. Richard is known for being a great warrior and a diplomat. Even his enemies admired him. After the crusade, Richard returns to England in 1192, but is captured in Austria and given to the Holy Roman Emperor as a prisoner. In England, his brother John is running the government, and he's doing a very bad job of it. This is when the legend of Robin Hood comes into lore. So King John is in England, so if you watch the old Disney cartoon, you'll see that Robin Hood, the whole thing, King John, yeah. So Richard is released in 1194 for 100,000 pounds of silver. That's 100,000 pounds of silver. Richard decides to go to France and declare war. France actually played a large part in their imprisonments. In 1199, Richard is attacking a French fort. Richard is hit in the shoulder with a crossbow, and that becomes infected. He is dying, and he wants to see who shot him. A boy is brought to Richard, and the boy claims that he was the one who fired the arrow. The boy thought he was going to be executed, but Richard actually pardoned him, saying in French, "Live on and be my bounty, behold the light of day." He gave the boy some silver, and the boy actually lived. Richard died with no heirs, and Richard is given the title Lionheart for his actions in battle. Richard is buried by his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, who dies in 1204 during her son King John's reign. Now Eleanor buried not only her husband, Richard II, but buried her son, Henry the Younger, Richard I, and also Geoffrey. Geoffrey never becomes king, so the title actually goes to King John. So King John is the last son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. John we're going to talk about tomorrow, since this has already taken long enough. John was never supposed to become king, and we'll take a look at his success and why there's only one King John of England. Anyway, here we have a picture of King John, 1199 to 1216. After listening to the PowerPoint, please answer the questions for April 8th. Today, students will understand how the crown passed from King Henry II to King John, and how did Henry II change the English law. Anyway, I hope you folks are having a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.